How's it going, everybody? In this video, we're going to go ahead and begin a implementation of service insertion, where what we're going to do is we're going to set up a firewall to do a single firewall deployment, where we're going to be able to add in firewall services into the VXLAN fabric. So I'm not going to waste any time really digging into how it's all going to work. I'm just going to go ahead and talk you through that real quick, and then we're going to dive into the config. So what we're going to do basically is on Nexus 9000v, we're going to go ahead and get him configured to be operational. So we're going to join him to the network, get everything squared away on him that needs to be. We're going to do the VLAN, VNI, all that good stuff, get him all squared away. We're going to set up a trunk link between 9K5 and switch 6, and then a trunk link between switch 6 and ASA11. Get him configured to do firewall inspection, and then he's going to point out here to the internet. So in order to get all this stuff deployed, we're going to have to go through a number of little steps. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and log in and get this bad boy started. So there's barely any config on here. If we do a show run pipe include feature, you can see that there's not a lot here turned on. If we do a show run BGP, BGP is not even running currently. So we're going to have to turn on some features as we're going along here. One of the first things that I'm going to go do is type in the features that we're going to need, which is going to be feature fabric forwarding for the HMM configuration. We're going to do feature interface VLAN, feature NV overlay, NV overlay Evpn, and then I think I already have VN segment turned on. Feature VN segment VLAN based, and that should be pretty much it. The little bit of config that we've got going on now, I'm going to go ahead and turn BGP on. Type in router. If we do a show IP, route, we can see that we're running OSPF in the underlay. If we do a show run PIM, we can see PIM is enabled in the underlay, which is good. So some of the basics are in play. So I'm going to type in router BGP 65001. And then one of the first things that I have to do is enable the L2 VPN Evpn address family. So it's going to be address family L2 VPN Evpn. I'm going to go ahead and type in neighbor of 10.0.0.2, remote AS of 65001, update source is loopback 0, address family L2 VPN Evpn, and then send community both. We're going to do show run BGP, and we're going to grab just a few of these lines, go to .4, and there we go. So now we should have a couple BGP peerings, show BGP L2 VPN Evpn summary, and we are good to go there. Now the reason why we're not learning anything is because we haven't configured any route targets or anything like that yet. So I need to do a show VLAN brief. VLAN 10 is created, which is perfect, which is exactly what I need. So I'm going to go show run VLAN, and there's nothing associated to VLAN 10 right now. So I'm going to type in VLAN 10, the name's already there. So I'm going to come in here and type in VN segment is 10010 or 10,010. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the basic config here. So I'm going to go ahead and do the interface NVE1, show run interface NVE1, and we're going to go ahead and say no shut. Source interface is going to be loopback 0. We're going to specify that member VNI 10010. MCAS group is going to be 224.1.1.1. and we're going to go ahead and define Evpn. We'll say VNI of 10,010 L2. RD is going to be auto. Route target both auto there. And if we show BGP L2 VPN Evpn summary, we're going to eventually start learning stuff in, because that's going to be the nature of the configuration. You know what? I bet you any money it's just there's nothing going on over here. So let's go ahead and log in on this guy. Log in over here. So show BGP L2 VPN Evpn. So it looks like you have a little bit of something going on, but not a whole lot. So what we're going to definitely need to do is do a we have stuff coming through, which is what we want. Let me just make sure that spine 1, if we were to admin and admin, make sure that everything is working correctly. Show run BGP. Make sure that 5 and 6 are configured correctly. Route reflector client. Okay, cool. So we have that going for us, but there's no routes being learned. And so the next thing we're going to have to go do is go through the process of setting up the VNI, or I'm sorry, not the VNI, the layer 3 VNI, the VRF, all that type of stuff. So if we go to the fabric forwarding Anycast gateway MAC address of 0001.0001.0001, and then if we were to do the VRF context of customer, if I could type customer 1, and then underneath here we're going to specify the VNI we're going to map this guy to is going to be 100,000 to 100, and then RD is going to be auto, address family IPv4 unicast. We're going to say route target both auto and Evpn, and we're going to go ahead and do an interface VLAN 10. We're going to say VRF member is going to be customer 1. We're going to go ahead and specify the IP address of 10.1.10.254/24. We're going to no shut this guy. And that's basically how that's going to come into play. We're going to do a show IP interface brief. Show IP interface brief of VRF customer 1. Good, we're good to go there. I'm also going to create VLAN 100. The name is going to be VLAN 100. The VNI will be 100,100. I'm going to go ahead and interface VLAN 100 VRF member of customer 1 on IP forward, and then we're going to no shut it. And then we're going to do a show run interface VLAN or NVE1 interface. Oh, I forgot. Now I know why it's not working. Host reachability protocol BGP. That's why, right there. I forgot about that. And we're going to do a member VNI 100,100 associate VRF. So if we show BGP L2 VPN Evpn now, we should see a bunch of stuff coming through, which we do. And we're seeing a bunch of stuff for customer 1 come across, which is what we want to have. So now we have that, which is good. If we were to do a summary tab, we're going to see that we're learning a bunch of stuff in from both connections, which is good. So now, if I was to do a show IP interface brief, VRF customer 1, there we go. Everything's looking good there. So now that we have all that in play, what we have to do is on E1/3, we're going to go ahead and type in switch port mode of trunk. Give that a couple seconds to do its thing. So that took about a minute for it to actually trigger, so we're going to give that a switch port command, and so that took a little longer than was expected. So we've got that configured. Now I'm going to go jump down to switch 6, which is right here. And we can see that there's some stuff going on. We're going to go to interface gig 0/0, switch port trunk and cap.1q, switch port mode of trunk. Host name is going to be switch 6. And then we're going to say VLAN 10. Name is VLAN 10. Go ahead and exit out of that config. And then we're going to go and interface gig 0/2, switch port trunk and cap.1q, switch port mode of trunk. And then there we have that. So now we have a trunk connected to ASA11. So Nexus 9000v, we're in good shape there. Show interface trunk. We should see that perfect. It's working right where it needs to be. The next thing for me to do, now that I've got all this set up, is to go down to ASA11. ASA11 is here. I'm going to go to global config. Host name is going to be ASA11. And I'm going to go to interface gig 0/0. I'm going to no shut it. Exit out, interface gig 0/0.10, VLAN 10. The IP address here will be 10.1.10.1/24. Oh, I can't do that. That's right. It's a slash. It's a dotted decimal. I'm going to type in here the name if is going to be inside underscore. Let's do dash VLAN 10. And security level by default will be 100. So there we have that. So if I was to do a show interface IP brief, we have that going for us. Now here's the trick. Can we ping from, say, PC13? Can we ping from PC13? Way over here. Can I ping .1? And I can. I can ping .1, and you can see the echo replies going back and forth. I can ping it all day long. If I go over here to ASA11 and I do a show ARP, you can see that I have the MAC address showing up. Now here's what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go to interface gig 0/2. I'm going to say the IP address here is going to be 101.0.0.11/24 mask. I'm going to no shut this guy. I'm going to give it a name if of outside. And I'm going to say route outside a default route to 101.0.0.1. And I'm going to do a show interface IP brief and make sure that 101.0.0.11 is up. It is up. I'm going to go to the iNet router. Go to global config. Host name is going to be iNet. And then I'm going to type in interface gig 0/1. I'm going to type in IP address here is going to be 101.0.0.1/24 mask, and no shut it. And that is pretty much all I need to worry about. I'm going to go back to ASA11. I need to do a couple things. I need to do a show run policy -map. And what this is basically going to mean, what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for the ICMP inspection policy. And currently there isn't one defined. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on ICMP for inspection. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a object network, which is going to be VLAN 10. I'm going to say subnet is going to be 10.1.10.0/24. I'm going to type in NAT inside outside, and it's going to be dynamic and interface. So with all that being said, I should be able to ping out to the internet router. I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and bring this over a little bit so we can see Wireshark on the outside. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take PC13. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ping 101.0.0.1. And the ping should be, the NAT should allow it to go through. So I can ping 10.1.1.10.1, where I can ping the ASA's inside interface. But then I should be able to NAT through and go to, let me just make sure that everything's up. Let me ping from ASA11. Let's do show interface IP brief and ping 101.0.0.1. Okay, that's working. So because I know that's working, I should be able to ping through. Let's do a show con long and go back to PC13 and make sure that it's actually working. Hit the up arrow and go to the ASA, hit the up arrow, and it's not actually triggering. So for whatever reason, it's not hitting it. So, and here's why it's not going to work. If we were to go over here to 9K1, for example, what you're going to see, go ahead and scoot this over just a little bit more. On 9K1, if we come over here, we do a, one of the things we're not doing on here is if we look at how this is set up, you're not going to see a layer 3 VNI pointing towards .5. Because what we didn't do on 9K5, that we do need to do, is a show run BGP. Right, so we have the Evpn configuration, right? All that's good to go, but underneath BGP, we don't have any routes advertised. So I'm going to go underneath here and type in router BGP 65001 VRF customer 1, and then address family IPv4 unicast, and type in network of 10.1.10.0/24. So what that's going to do is that's going to propagate a BGP update. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that now. And we're going to see that underneath the layer 3 VNI, I have .5 showing up, right? And if I look at this now, I should be able to point to that. Let's try this one more time. So in the ASA, it's still not going through. So I may have to do some additional config. So let's take a look at how this is set up. So part of the problem that's happening now, if we look in the routing table on Nexus 9K1, if we look in here, do show IP route VRF customer 1, you don't see a default route. So basically the Nexus switches aren't actually doing any propagation. So let's actually walk through this configuration on the 5K because he's actually connected to it. So what we have to do underneath this design is we have to create a default route. So in order to create the default route and make it VRF aware, we need to type in VRF context customer 1, and underneath here we're going to type in IP route, the default route, to 10.0.0. or 10.1.10.1. Okay. Now if we show IP route VRF customer 1, we are going to see a default route sitting in the routing table, right? Now if we come over here to 9K1 and hit the up arrow, we're not going to see a default route showing up here. We have to advertise it into BGP. So what we're going to go do is under 9K5, I'm going to exit out of here and I'm going to type in router BGP 65001 VRF customer 1, and underneath the address family IPv4 unicast, we're going to type in network of 0.0.0.0/0, and we're going to hit the enter key. Now advertise route towards Evpn side, so we can type in Evpn and hit the enter key, right? And then we can come back over here to 9K1, hit the up arrow, and you'll notice now that it's showing up in the routing table, right? It's showing up in the routing table, and now if I try to do this again from PC13 side, let's see if this will help. And so it's like, well, I don't know what to do with that. It's like I'm not sure what to do with that particular route. So there's a couple of additional things that you may need to put into play here. So one of the things we can add in on the 5K side, because over here we're looking at, we've got a default route that's being pointed towards 5, right? But 13, PC13 is like, well, I don't know how to reach, or it's like I can't reach my default gateway. So if I was to ping 10.1.10.254, it's like, I don't know what to do, boss. I don't know what to do. So over here, if we do a show BGP L2 VPN EVPN, we can see that we're advertising a default route in the layer 3 VNI. If we come up here a little bit, you're going to see this route right here. Right? This route is being advertised because it's, this MAC address is correlated to ASA11. If we look at ASA11 and we do a show interface gig 0/0, we're going to see this MAC address right there. So that's how we know for sure that it's working this way. So there's a couple different things we can do to fix this. First thing, we're going to pull this command out, because right now this isn't doing us any favors. If I come up here and I try to go to PC13 and ping my default gateway, default gateway is not going to go anywhere. So if I go over here and I do a show IP route, we're going to lose that default route. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go on 9K5 and I'm going to type in redistribute static route map. I'm going to call this static to BGP. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a route dash map called static to BGP. I'm going to say match, and then what we have to do is we actually have to match on the route itself. So I'm going to type in match IP address in the prefix list of default. Okay, and how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go in here to create a prefix list called IP prefix list, call it default. I'm going to say permit 0.0.0.0/0. Okay, so now I have a prefix list that's being called by the rest of the network. So I have that being advertised now. If I show IP route VRF customer 1, we can see that it's being advertised, right? It's being redistributed. If I come over here to 9K1, hit the up arrow, we can still see that it's not being advertised. And this is the problem, right? It's not being aggregated. What I'm going to do is on 9K5, I'm going to come over here, and I actually have to do one additional command. It's going to be router BGP 65001 under VRF customer 1, address family IPv4 unicast. I'm going to type in the command default information originate. I'm going to do that. Come back over here to this guy, hit the up arrow, and now we have a default route. It's a very similar configuration that we did before. The only difference is we should have reachability now. So on 13, if I hit the up arrow, I'm not getting anywhere. Can I ping 10.1.10.1? I can't ping that either. And this is where the this is where the problem lies. So why did I lose my connectivity to that? Let's ping 10.1.10.13. Okay, he's unable to ping it either. So on router 5, I'm sorry, Nexus 9K5, show run BGP and see what the config. Okay, so it's advertising the route, which is what I want. Now on the 9K1, I'm sorry, PC13, I could reconfigure my default gateway to sit and point towards ASA11. I could do that, but that really kind of defeats the purpose. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can actually go and configure OSPF or some dynamic routing protocol between 9K5 and ASA11 and get that to work. So what we need to make sure we're doing is on 9K1, when we do a show IP route, we're putting the route where it needs to be. If we do a show BGP, L2BPN, EVPN for, go ahead and do VNI 10,010, right now we get a default route from our 9K5. So we get a default route from him, and that's where we should be trying to connect to. So not sure why we're getting all of that all of a sudden. Spine 1E1 10.2.10. Wonder if there's a problem in the lab. But we have this particular problem, and this is where the problem begins to become problematic for us. So if I was just to try to ping this again, yeah, there's a problem in the network, because we shouldn't. I mean, we're seeing stuff. It's being encapsulated, so we're trying to figure out why. (10.0.0.13). That should be reachable. The ARP request is what? Okay, that's specific to. That's kind of weird. But if we look at, for example, where that's PC13, if we look at PC14 and we try to ping 10.1.10.1, it's trying. Not sure why that's failing all of a sudden. We look at show VPC. This is actually out of scope for what we're trying to do. But if we look at 9K5 and we do a show run and make sure everything is squared away here. So everything looks right. We have the VLAN created. That's all correct. Not really sure why it's giving me a hard time. I don't think I need to do anything with the VNIs that I've got created are good. Not sure what the problem is at the moment. Alright, so now that so I just gave it some time and all of a sudden it started to work again. So I must have been trying to just age some stuff out. But if I try to ping, let's try to ping 101 now. There it goes. If we look at the ASA, hit the up arrow. Let's try that one more time. We'll try to do the ping and the ASA. There should be a connection in the. So it's happening so fast that there's. Okay, there's the ping. So the ping is going through. I'm going to try to set up Telnet on this guy. So username is going to be Rob. Privilege level 15, password is Cisco, and in line VTY0 _ 4 is going to be login local, and transport input is all. So if I try to go from 13 and I try to do R login, what are my options here? R login is going to be R login, and then the command would be 101.0.0.1 to port 23, and I come over here to the ASA and hit the up arrow. It should be trying to open up a connection to it. I'm not sure why it doesn't do it. It's kind of weird on how it does it. So we're trying to attach the console of a virtual router. So to Telnet to the port of 2004 remote host 10.1.1.1, use rlogin. So clearly I'm trying to connect to that device, and what should be happening is we control C. I don't know if that's going to work. Yeah, it's not going to let me do it. But the ping works. I wanted to do a TCP test, but it doesn't look like it's going to let me do that. But needless to say, if we go over here to 14 and I try to do a ping test, it is working, and that's really what I wanted to have happen. So what I had to do was on 9K5, I had to go in and I had to advertise this subnet into BGP so it would have a layer 3 VNI configured. Then underneath the VRF, which is way the heck up here, underneath the VRF, I had to advertise the default route to point to the ASA. So So this is one way of doing it. There are other ways of pulling it off, but this was the cleanest way. And then I had to create a prefix list to match on the default route, and then call the prefix list from the route map, and then call the route map from BGP right here. And that's how I was able to do it. And then I had to do a default information originate. So that's the only way I've been able to get it to work. It could just be I'm doing something wrong, but it gets the job done and it's working. So I'm not going to cry over spilled milk in this particular case, considering it is working the way that I need it to. So there are other ways of doing this. If you wanted to dive into them in more detail, I am going to test out doing things like OSPF routing and stuff like that. But right now, this is a basic deployment, and it seems to be working the way that I need it to. So this is a single firewall attached to the network, and it gets the job done. That's really what we're trying to do. Connect to 101. Press to control X to quit. Notice you will be back to the starting point, not the last. So let's make sure that the iNet router is listening for Telnet. So if we were to Telnet from switch 6, now switch 6 doesn't have a default route, but we could Telnet it from Nexus 9000v, Telnet to Telnet 101.0.0.1 and VRF customer 1. It's trying. If we look at the ASA, we see an active connection coming through, and the subnet's right, but the 9K5 connection, it's tempting it. It's like it's weird, like it doesn't want to allow it through. That's almost what it's basically telling me. So let me go ahead and do show run pipe section line, and let's see what the config looks like. Maybe login local, yeah, transport input all. So line VTY 0 / 4 transport input is going to be Telnet. Let's try that and then do this again. It tried but failed. And because the ASA is doing stateful inspection by default, it should allow it through, which I'm actually kind of legit surprised that it's not. Let's try to do this from PC13 again. And rlogin and see if the ASA is seeing that one. And it is not. It's only seeing. So I might actually have to throw in a router in here just to, or configure this guy. Let's connect switch 9. We can configure it with an interface loop, an SPI. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's one thing you could try. But it's for whatever reason it's not working. So we're going to control X, control shift 6 X. Yeah, it's not going to let me. Control plus X. Yeah, it's not working. So I think that's a limitation, to be honest with you, but it is what it is. So we've got everything else working to this point, which is what we want to have. So beyond that, the next steps we're going to go through is doing a VPC between Nexus 5 and 6K, and then set up that peering down to switch 6, and then take these ASAs here and put them into a active standby HA deployment so we can continue our follow through of this particular section. So until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.